Man, this one was so much fun. So what happens when the world's most famous musical comedian, a guy who's made a career out of roasting rock's biggest acts, completely snubs you? Or gives us a short clip of what a full-blown parody might have been like, but just never turned it into a full song. Today, we're talking about missed opportunities and hidden gems by the king of musical comedy, and we're covering career-defining hits that were just begging to be mocked. The biggest bands and artists who somehow escaped the ultimate honor in music, getting sonically skewered by the prince of parody himself, Mr. Weird Al. Now, most of these bands, they got a little taste of what a parody of their song could have been, but they never got the full Monty, and many were, like I said, huge missed opportunities, including one over-the-top hard rock frontman who was brilliantly mocked on multiple occasions. It's a great effect, but just not when it counted most, as well as another rock frontman who really wanted to be skewered, but Al declined. There's also the hilarious stand-up of an alt-rock icon's music video where he rides shotgun and he spazzes out right alongside her, but he skipped the song parody. And then there's also a funny parody making fun of a legendary band who was fighting with Napster at the time. Many claimed it was Al and the song started going viral, but was it the real deal? We're going to find out next on Professor of Rock. Hey, music junkies, make sure to subscribe below before we start so you always know when our stuff comes out. Today, we're returning to one of my favorite artists that we get to cover on this channel, the great Weird Al Yankovic. It's been a little while since we've counted down the Prince of Parody, but man, for this episode, it's a good one. We're breaking new ground. For this one, we're going to count down the top 7 bands and artists or songs that were begging for the Weird Al treatment, but some of them completely missed out. Now, let me explain what I mean. Among Weird Al's many, many songs, there's what I call the holy grail parodies, right? Talking about hit songs that are picked by Al to give a complete comedic overhaul to. You know, Eat It, Like a Surgeon, Fat, Smells Like Nirvana, Amish Paradise. These are songs that Al rewrote the lyrics to, featured on, one of his studio albums, and then he shot a music video. A lot of them, he spoofed the original music video.
So eat it. Don't you tell me you're full, just eat it. Hey, like a surgeon. I'm 7 rolls because I'm fat, fat, fat. Come on, really fat. I'll stick all these bubbles in my mouth. Spending most our lives living in an Amish paradise.
Of course, this is without a doubt the ultimate compliment to any artist. Many have told me in interviews the same thing, but it's important to understand that that's only the tip of the iceberg when it comes to what Al does. Weird Al also has fun with songs and artists by doing style parodies on his albums, polka medleys and original tracks as well. He also writes songs that he performs exclusively in concert. And that's not even getting into Weird Al's massive pop culture footprint. That includes movies and TV shows and comedy sketches and voice acting and a ton of other stuff. The point is, he does all kinds of parodies beyond your standard hit song comedic rewrites that we've all heard and know. They're not the holy grail tracks, though. And so for this episode, I'm going to count down the biggest bands and artists who were parodied by Al, but most people missed them because they weren't released on a proper album, or they've been in medleys, or they've only been done in concert. Artists who probably deserved to feel the full weight of Al's comedic powers. Basically, a lot of these are Weird Al hidden gems. All right, let's get into it. Coming in at number 7, I've got Daryl Hall and John Oates. Back in the 70s and 80s, Daryl Hall and John Oates were one of the top pop rock duos, blending blue-eyed soul and new wave synths across a string of blockbuster albums. They had so many hits. In the process, they produced so many. Rich Girl, Kiss on My List, You Make My Dreams, Private Eyes, I Can't Go For That, No Can Do, and Out of Touch, Maneater. Those are just to name a few.
And you're gone too far, 'cause you know it don't matter anyway. Because your kiss is on my list. Because your kiss, oh yeah, you make my dreams come true. Private eyes, I'm watching you. Go for that, no can do, I can't go for that. You're out of touch, I'm out of time. Oh, here she comes, she's a man eater.
But although Daryl Hall and John Oates dominated the MTV era, they managed to miss out on one of the biggest prizes available to them at the time, a full Weird Al song parody. Seems pretty wild considering that Al was carving out his career during the exact time that Daryl Hall and John Oates were absolutely inescapable, especially on radio. But we got close. Actually, the closest that Daryl Hall and John Oates ever got to this holy grail coverage was Spam Eater, Al's in-concert parody of their 1982 #1 hit Man Eater. Oh, here she comes. Boy, she likes that processed meat. Oh, here she comes. She's a spam eater. I love it.
Oh, here she comes. She's a spam eater.
Spam Eater, that lived exclusively in his live shows between about 1983 and 1987 as part of his food medleys alongside bits like the Thompson Twins' Moldy Now, so Hold Me Now, Simple Minds' Don't You Forget About Meat, and there was also Led Zeppelin's Whole Lotta Lunch. The concept was pure Weird Al. He twisted the sultry warning about a predatory woman into a ridiculous rant about someone who can't stop devouring spam. There's plenty of people like that, right? Unfortunately, Spam Eater, along with these other grocery aisle gold standards, never made the leap to full-on parody. Never made the cut.
Oh, here she comes.
However, in 1985, Daryl Hall and John Oates did make it onto an official Weird Al release. Their 1984 track, Method of Modern Love, great song from their album Big Bam Boom. It got squeezed onto the Hooked on Polkas on Al's Dare to Be Stupid album. The medley was an absolute blitz of mid-80s hits with Method of Modern Love sandwiched between Tina Turner and Yes. But like most of his polka bits, it was just a snippet.
METHODOFLOVE, it's the method of modern love.
What's really puzzling about it, though, is there are so many massive Daryl Hall and John Oates hits that were just practically begging for the Weird Al treatment. You know, 80s juggernauts like Kiss on My List, You Make My Dreams, Private Eyes, Out of Touch. I mean, any one of these could have been comedy gold. Private Eyes alone with its paranoid vibe and catchy hook feels like it was custom built for a Weird Al parody, at least to me. But somehow none of them ever made the transition from chart topper to Weird Al immortality. What do you think the parodies would have been? Tell me in the comments. All right, coming in number 6, I got to go with Alanis Morissette. Now, Alanis began in the 1990s as a teen dance pop artist in Canada. A lot of people don't know that. It was her alt-rock breakthrough, Jagged Little Pill in 95, though, that put her on the map. Hits like You Oughta Know, Ironic, and You Learn propelled the album to over 30 million in global sales. Alanis followed that with Uninvited, of course, hit number 4 on the Hot 100 airplay chart in the City of Angels soundtrack. And their triple platinum LP, Supposed Former Infatuation Junkie, arrived in 98 with the hit Thank You. There's no way around it. Alanis was massive in the 90s, and yet she was almost completely ignored by Weird Al in the studio albums. Why? Well, it's true, Al never gave Alanis a full studio album parody, and it's not like there weren't enough hits in Alanis' catalog to make fun of. She was ripe for parody. Media outlets mocked her for her intense, some would say exaggerated emotional delivery, for her vocal quirks and her moves on stage, or for not knowing the definition of ironic, but still we got nothing. Okay, not nothing. We just didn't get a full Weird Al version of one of her hits. But what we did get was about 25 seconds of You Oughta Know Polka. You can catch that spoof in between R.E.M's Bang and Blame and the Smashing Pumpkins' Bullet with Butterfly Wings on the Bad Hair Day track, The Alternative Polka.
On the cross-eyed bear that you gave to me, you oughta know.
So what full parodies made it on to Bad Hair Day instead of that? Well, Coolio's Gangsta's Paradise became Amish Paradise, of course. The President's Lump turned into Gump. TLC's Waterfalls got reworked into Phony Calls. Soul Asylum's Misery morphed into Syndicated Incorporated, and U2's Hold Me, Thrill Me, Kiss Me, Kill Me became Cavity Search.
What's with that hair? Don't go making phony calls. Syndicated, incorporated. I'm gonna need some fillings. Got 12 cavities.
Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not questioning the Prince of Parody here, and maybe he just reached out to the artist and they didn't give permission because he wanted to do that. But you ought to know, and ironic were at least as big as any of those tracks. Now, the good news is that Al did find other ways to poke fun at Alanis. For example, he spoofed the ironic music video, and it's really, really funny. You can catch him riding shotgun, singing along and spazzing out with Alanis, and even climbing out the passenger window. And then a few years later, Al revisited Alanis' catalog for his 1999 to 2000 touring with Scissors tour. On stage, he transformed her 1998 hit Thank You into Fast Food as part of his latest concert food medley. The parody name-dropped fast food chains like Burger King and Pizza Hut and KFC and Taco Bell, with Al working in slogans like Run for the Border and Have It My Way. But once again, this was not the full treatment, right? So what's the deal? Why didn't Alanis Morissette get a complete parody? In the research that I did, looking at the timing, I think it was the timing of her hits that did her in. At least it did for Ironic and the Jagged Little Pill singles that followed it. Ironic didn't drop until February 27th, 1996, and Al's Bad Hair Day album would hit stores 2 weeks later on March 12th. But by that point, Al had already wrapped up on January 15th, 1996. So Ironic wasn't a hit at that time. But as for the rest of Alanis' popular singles, I mean, your guess is as good as mine. Let me take a second to mention our sponsor. Like some of us, we plan our gifts early. But in reality, we're blasting Springsteen Santa Claus is coming to town on December 23rd and praying the mall still has something that says, I care. But this year, Aura Frames makes you look like you planned it all along. Whether it's a photo of mom dancing in the kitchen or your kid's first guitar solo, this frame turns those moments into front row seats to memory lane. You can preload it with unlimited photos and videos, add a message, and it ships in a gorgeous gift box. No wrapping paper required. It's personal, it's powerful, and honestly, it's the easiest way to win the holidays without breaking a sweat. Because you can't wrap togetherness, but you can frame it. Right now, go to auraframes.com and get $35 off their best-selling carver mat frames named #1 by Wirecutter when you use promo code ROCK at checkout. That's auraframes.com, promo code ROCK. This exclusive deal is just for you and it won't last long. Frames sell out fast. Terms and conditions apply. All right, heading into the number 5 spot, I've got the band that truly dominated the 80s hard rock landscape with two separate and iconic frontmen, Van Halen. Despite dominating MTV and rock radio throughout the 80s, the exact period when Al was building his parody empire, Van Halen never got a full studio parody track of their own. The closest that Al ever came to a Van Halen song parody was Stuck in a Closet with Vanna White from his 1988 album, Even Worse. It was written and produced by Rick Derringer. It's kind of a deep cut that plays like a glam metal fever dream. The song is structured as a therapy session where Al's narrator confesses his recurring anxiety nightmares starring Willa Fortune's Vanna White.
Vanna, put those L's on there.
And this one, the scenarios get progressively weirder and weirder. Shopping in his underwear, floating in midair, bowling on Star Trek's Enterprise. All building to the image that haunts him the very most, being trapped in a closet with Vanna night after night after night, unable to escape or even buy a vowel to get out. Musically, the trap captures the 80s hard rock drama without claiming to target any specific band, though Van Halen is likely one of the influences here. What do you think? There's also another 80s Van Halen reference that specifically targets Eddie Van Halen. Of course, I'm talking about EVH's explosive guitar solo on Michael Jackson's Beat It. Al turned Beat It into one of his biggest commercial tracks when he remade it into Eat It in 1984. And though Al wasn't able to wrangle Eddie to recreate his guitar solo for Eat It, that honor, of course, went to Rick Derringer, he did give a nod to the legendary guitarist's insane skills. Remember, for the Eat It video, Al went all in rebuilding Beat It's set, hiring Jackson's dancers and extras, and even keeping the original video playing on a monitor during filming to nail every single detail just right.
Eat it, eat it, eat it. Eat it, eat it, eat it, eat it.
When it came time to do the bit on Eddie's solo, Al's guitarist was shown finger tapping his way into oblivion. Or in other words, he played so fast and intense, he actually exploded. Nice little gag paying homage to Eddie. Later in the 90s, Al would revisit Van Halen territory in a completely different way, though. After the band's underwhelming 1998 album, Van Halen 3, Al did a bit on his show Al TV. The sketch announced the winner of the I Want to Be the New Lead Singer for Van Halen contest. Al noted that the previous contest winner, Gary Cherone, had given up the title, so it was time to randomly draw a new name. And the winner? Well, that was some kid named Irving Feldman from New Jersey.
Is Irving Feldman from Nutley, New Jersey. All right, Irving, way to go.
Al actually gets him on the phone to deliver the good news, but there's only one problem. Irving has to check with his mom first.
Is it okay with your mom?
Just a minute. Mom!
Of course, she asks if he's finished his homework. And since he has, he's given permission to become Van Halen's new lead singer. It's really good.
Well, then I guess it's okay. All right, thanks, Mom, yeah!
I mean, why didn't he do a song parody? Why didn't that happen? I don't know. They had so many massive hits. I mean, Jump was everywhere in 1984. It could have been Hump. Panama dominated rock radio the same year. Even Right Now it could have been a lot of fun. Yet somehow these all slipped through Al's fingers, making Van Halen is one of the biggest that Weird Al never covered, his Big What If. And David Lee Roth himself has allegedly mentioned in passing that he's always wondered why Al never went there. There was a lot to mock, but for some reason, Al just never answered the bell. I'll have to ask him.
Tour starts next month.
Wow, wait till I tell Kevin.
Okay, Irving. See ya on the charts.
All right, in at number 4, we have the Eagles and Don Henley. I mean, what can you say about the Eagles that hasn't already been said? They're one of the defining musical forces of the 70s. Don Henley's probably about ready to send me a copyright notice for saying his name on here. But look, arguably they're America's band, America's greatest rock and roll band. I mean, from Take It Easy to Best of My Love to One of These Nights to Hotel California to Heartache Tonight, Take It to the Limit.
Take it easy. Welcome to the Hotel California.
They built an enviable legacy. And honestly, so did Don Henley in the 80s. I mean, Dirty Laundry, The Boys of Summer, The End of the Innocents, all incredible songs.
In my ear, give us dirty laundry. After the boys of summer have gone. End of the innocence.
But despite Eagles and Don Henley dominating classic rock radio for decades, Al never gave them a full studio album parody, which seems really strange when you consider how Al has always gravitated toward massive hits and cultural touchstones. Members of the Eagles delivered those in spades throughout the 70s and 80s. Al did briefly flirt with their catalog through live snippets and possible style parodies, but a proper studio track never materialized, at least not a full track. The earliest connection actually dates back to Al's late 70s live performances when Al started including avocado in his food-themed medleys. This rough snippet took the Eagles' melancholic ballad Desperado and transformed it into a silly warning about the inevitable fate of an avocado. Al personified the fruit, it's actually a fruit, singing lines like, "Avocado, what makes you think you're so holy? You're gonna be guacamole before too long."
Guacamole before too long.
And then urging it to let somebody eat you before it's too late. I mean, what's not to love about that? There should have been a full version of that.
Desperado. Avocado.
Now, the bit became a cult favorite among fans throughout the 80s, but it never got expanded into a full track or an official album release. Then fast forward to 1986, and Al made an Eagles adjacent appearance at the Grammys. During his Style Guide to the Grammys segment, he briefly, and I mean briefly, performed The Boys of Summer on accordion. Of course, Don Henley's 1984 to 1985 solo smash at number 5 on the Hot 100, becoming one of the defining songs of the mid-80s. But once again, this was it was okay, but it was a missed opportunity. What would he have done with The Boys of Summer? Let me know in the comments.
The Boys of Summer.
And then later in 1992, Al released When I Was Your Age on his album Off the Deep End. While never officially confirmed, there's more than enough sonic evidence in the track that really points to being influenced by Henley's 1982 solo hit Dirty Laundry. And when I was your age, Al lampoons the classic baby boomer rant about the back in my day hardships, walking uphill both ways barefoot in the snow and, somehow surviving without modern luxuries. It's a perfect thematic match for Henley's wry storytelling style, but still you gotta wonder why Dirty Laundry or The Boys This Summer didn't get the full treatment. A full studio version of either of those tracks would have been really, really killer. Don Henley would have sent a cease and desist immediately. He definitely would not have agreed to something like that, so that's probably why. But can you imagine him tackling Hotel California or Take It Easy? Not even Weird Al is immune to the wrath of Mr. Henley. I'm guessing, anyway. Who knows, but man, it would have been cool. So he made it all the way to number 3, and here I gotta go with one of my favorite bands, and they dominated the 70s and 80s like no other, Heart. Heart killed it in the 70s and 80s, especially their 1975 debut, Dreamboat Annie. Of course, they've had so many FM radio staples, Magic Man, Crazy on You. From there, they racked up Barracuda, Straight On, Dog and Butterfly. The early 80s saw a dip in their popularity, right? But then they came back in 1985 with their self-titled Capitol debut. A polished number 1 album spawning top 10 hits like What About Love? Went to number 10, Never went to number 4, and the number 1 ballad, These Dreams.
Don't you want someone to care about you?
And in 1987, Heart upped the ante with Bad Animals, scoring their second number 1 hit alone and fueling massive MTV exposure, sold-out tours, and over millions more albums sold. But even though Heart delivered massive hits across 2 distinct eras, they didn't get really anything from Al. What makes this even more puzzling, though, is that Weird Al actually did create 2 abbreviated Heart parodies very early in his career. He just never took them beyond the live stage. Al's Heart parodies date back to the late 70s during his Dr. Demento show days. Around 1979, he crafted Gravy on You, transforming the fiery guitar riff and passionate energy of Crazy on You from Heart's 1970 debut into a ridiculous ode to smothering food and gravy, which I love to do. I'm sure you do too. He also created Hot Dogs and Apple Pie, twisting one of Ann's favorites, Dog and Butterfly, from Heart's 1978 album into a goofy picnic anthem.
The reason I'm going to throw gravy on you.
I mean, these would have been perfect full-on parodies, especially for early in his career when he was talking about food a lot of times. Al performed both regularly in concert from about 79 into the mid-80s, often stringing them into his food medley during opening acts. But by the time his self-titled debut album dropped in 83, Al had moved on. He was chasing new parodies targeting more recent top 40 smashes. Later in the 80s, Heart mantled one of rock's most spectacular comebacks, like I said, but the timing was off for a Weird Al parody. Heart released their self-titled comeback album on July 6, 1985. This was just weeks after Al dropped Dare to Be Stupid on June 18th. Their number 1 smash, These Dreams, didn't hit the airwaves until January of 86. By that time, Al's next album, Polka Party, hit retail on October 21st, 1986. These Dreams was already in the rearview mirror by that point. The bad timing continued as Heart's other number 1 smash, Alone from Bad Animals, topped the charts in July of 87. It was roughly 9 months before Al released his next album, Even Worse. And Al didn't even hit the recording studio until November 30th, 1987. So by then, the momentum had passed for that point. Then, of course, there's All I Want to Do Is Make Love to You, which seems like the perfect Heart track for Al to make fun of. Song that Ann Wilson hates with a passion. She calls it creepy. She doesn't like to sing it. A cringy song was massive in 1990, went all the way to number 2. But by that time, Nirvana, he went off the deep end, and he was going to be focused on more in newer acts. Things just never quite lined up. Sure, Al could have gone back and tackled some Heart tracks after the fact, but whatever reason, he never did. Honestly, I think that Al should do a classic rock album. He should take like 15 of the top classic rock tracks and turn them into parodies. I know he's done that with a lot of classic rock songs, but it'd be really cool to get a new album from him. And I guarantee you the boomers and Gen Xers would buy it in droves. I'm on board. What about you guys?
Throw gravy, gravy on you.
Take a quick break to remind you to get your Vintage Years collection shirts. We got a special running all through the holidays. Get them. We got every year. All right, we're to the top 2. Next, at the bridesmaid position, number 2, I've got Metallica, a band that forged thrash metal's footprint in the 80s. Of course, they formed in LA in 1981 and released their debut Kill 'Em All in 1983. Ride the Lightning came next in 84 with expanded epics like Fade to Black. 1986's Master of Puppets has been held as one of the genre's best, and Justice for All came next in 1988 with one earning Metallica their first Grammy nomination. Now, to be fair to Al, Metallica tracks from the 80s, they weren't exactly mainstream. So understandably, they weren't likely to be on Al's radar for parody fodder. But jump ahead to the band's 1981 self-titled LP, aka the Black Album, and here's where Al had a real opportunity to really mock. This was Metallica's coming out party, with now iconic cuts like Enter Sandman, Nothing Else Matters, and The Unforgiven. Debuted at number 1 of the Billboard 200, and of course the Black Album has sold 33 million copies worldwide and launched stadium tours that really redefined metal's mainstream reach. However, despite Metallica's current status as metal royalty, Al didn't pay very much attention to him back then.
And nothing else matters. So I dub the
Actually, his first brush with Metallica came on his 1992 album, Off the Deep End. Those sessions ran from June 1990 to January of 92, and Enter Sandman dropped right in the middle of that window on July 29, 1991. The track climbed to number 16 on the Billboard Hot 100 and it became Metallica's biggest mainstream hit. Al was already deep into work on the album, which of course featured his massive Nirvana parody, Smells Like Nirvana. But Enter Sandman, that was relegated to polka medley status. For his latest polka medley titled Polka Your Eyes Out, Al squeezed Enter Sandman's iconic riff into about 10 seconds of his latest accordion frenzy. The medley was stacked with early 90s hits, you know, Billy Idol, Suzanne Vega, the B-52s, R.E.M., Vanilla Ice, Motley Crue, and more. Enter Sandman got slotted into that chaotic mix. So why didn't Al go full throttle on Enter Sandman at least? I mean, commercially, it was probably, well, I don't know. Maybe it just wasn't a big enough radio track. He's kind of focused more on pop like MC Hammer, Milli Vanilli, and the New Kids on the Block. They got the spotlight for, you know, full song treatments there.
Watch this. Yo, give me that remote control. I can't watch this. Talking about.
My pancreas just went into shock. I love the white stuff.
I guess it's understandable. Coming into Off the Deep End, Al was on the rebound from the box office disappointment of his movie UHF, and it was likely after undeniable mainstream hits, you know, to get back on his feet. And Metallica, they probably didn't fit the mold. So there's the brief polka shout out to Enter Sandman. Was that as close as Weird Al ever got to Metallica to making fun of him? Well, maybe. Actually, in the early 2000s, an Enter Sandman parody emerged that many people claimed was Weird Al. Came out in 2000. In fact, started getting airplay. It was during Metallica's infamous lawsuits against Napster for facilitating illegal music downloads. Actually, the parody was called Enter Napster, and it started circulating. So, do you think this is Al?
We're off to Napster land.
The track twisted Enter Sandman into a mockery of the band's aggressive stance against the file-sharing company, complete with crunchy guitars and Al-style vocal mimicry. Fooled some casual listeners into thinking it was the real Weird Al deal. The track was actually created by an anonymous comedian, sometimes credited as Bruce87, and it actually got uploaded onto YouTube in 2008. It racked up views as fans less familiar with Weird Al debated its authenticity, leading to disclaimers like, just because it's a parody, it doesn't mean it's Weird Al. All right, at number 1, I've got the world's most dangerous band, Guns N' Roses. I mean, come on. How could you not make fun of Axl Rose? Guns N' Roses erupted in the late 80s, hard rock scene. Of course, Appetite for Destruction ruled the juggernaut that featured smashes like Welcome to the Jungle and Sweet Child of Mine and Paradise City. Sold over 30 million copies, the biggest selling rock debut album ever.
Welcome to the jungle. We got fun and games. Whoa, sweet child of mine. Take me down to a paradise city where the grass is green and the girls are pretty.
It made music dangerous again, like I said. And then, of course, there was 1991, Use Your Illusion 1 and 2, which debuted at number 2 and number 1 on the Billboard 200 at the same time, with Don't Cry and November Rain.
And don't you cry tonight. Under the candles in the cold November rain.
Actually, GNR and WAY actually had plenty of intersections throughout the late 80s and early 90s. Or at least Al made a point to give them a pretty hard time whenever he could. This mainly happened through visual media, though, rather than parody tracks on his albums. I don't know why he never covered these. The first major GNR reference came in 1989 with Al's UHF music video. Of course, Al delivers a spot-on visual parody of Welcome to the Jungle. Dressed in a tattered tank top and bandana, Yankovic channels Axl Rose's wild man energy on stage while giving us altered lyrics more fitting of his UHF narrative. Ultimately, he flips the menacing hard rock video with comedic perfection into a goofy promo for the fictional low-budget TV station. Great gag, but all too brief in my opinion. Then in 1991, after Guns N' Roses released Use Your Illusion 1 and 2 at the same time, 30 tracks, Al took aim at the absurd oversaturation on Al TV News. He reported that Guns N' Roses had achieved a historical musical coup by releasing 200 albums all at once, all of them Use Your Illusion LPs.
By recording and then simultaneously releasing 200 albums at once.
I mean, the segment showed one deadpan fan expressing how deeply she needed to purchase all 200 albums. I mean, just getting Use Your Illusion number 63 or number 149 was not enough. She had to have all of them.
I need them. I live for them. I have no life. Help me.
Al also did a Mystery Science Theater style comedic commentary track over Don't Cry for an Al TV broadcast, mocking Axl Rose's hyper-dramatic performance there.
This is the video police. Stop trying to rip off Let It Be.
Then years later at the 1998 American Music Awards, Al made his first public appearance after getting LASIK surgery. He joined Drew Carey, Those Darn Accordions, and Dick Contino on stage for an all-star accordion medley that included Sweet Child of Mine, though it was a pretty quick bit. But why didn't any of these references translate into full studio parodies? The timing was certainly there. I mean, Appetite for Destruction dropped in July of '87, right before Al put out Even Worse in early '88. Sweet Child of Mine and Welcome to the Jungle were absolutely massive during that window, all over MTV. And then his UHF soundtrack arrived on July 18th, 1989, another perfect opportunity, especially if he could have extended his parody of Welcome to the Jungle. The Use Your Illusion albums, those came out in September 91, like I said, with Off the Deep End following on April 14th, 1992. I mean, some kind of November Rain parody should have been there, in my opinion. The missed opportunities, they're kind of frustrating when you look back because Sweet Child of Mine had that instantly recognizable opening riff and those lyrics that we all know, the urban survival theme. It could have been twisted into something really funny. November Rain's epic overwrought drama was just begging for the Al treatment. What could have been, right? But what do you think? What would he have called them? What would the parodies have been? Let me know. I think Guns N' Roses, that's why they're my number one, because that's definitely a cultural touchstone that he should have tackled. Maybe he was afraid that Axl would come after him, Henley and Axl actually sang on a track together. Let's have a great discussion below. What do you think some of these parodies would have been called? What is the great Weird Al parody that we needed that we didn't get? I think Chicken Pot Pie would have been great. Live and Let Die, Chicken Pot Pie. I've mentioned that one before.
Say live and let die. It's chicken pot pie.
When it comes to parodies, though, there are some sacred artists and sacred songs that Al just won't touch out of respect. I've mentioned it before, but he hasn't ever recorded a McCartney cover or a Lennon cover, really, for except for, in some of his polkas and things. But he did write Chicken Pot Pie, my favorite, a send-up of Live and Let Die, but he's only performed it live. He's never recorded it because he does get the blessing of the artist that he covers, even though he really didn't have to, since it does fall under parody, which is protected. But McCartney politely declined, since he is a vegan, and Al respected that, and he refused to record it. Man, Chicken Pot Pie is one of the best, though. So funny. Again, classic rock. He should do a classic rock covers, do a bunch of parodies of classic rock tracks. It'd be amazing. Let's have what are your memories of all of these albums, all these groups that came out? Let's have a great discussion below if you like our content. We would love to have you subscribe. We'd love to have you on our community. Until next time, 3 chords and the truth, my friends.